Fight.
Welcome back to the Two Pointers podcast. I'm Trevor Everette. Today is kind of a packed solo show here. As you'll see in the title, for those who don't know what the Jerome is, we'll get into it. I knew about it, but didn't know really what it was and that it was called the Jerome. So I participated this year. Shout out to Will from House of College Hoops putting together some graphics for the team, and I'll get into that. I'll put mine on the screen for the YouTube audience. Before we jump into it, don't forget the Two Pointers podcast is sponsored by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the presenting sponsor of the Two Pointers podcast to provide you, the audience, and the listeners with the opportunity to earn $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek.com or in the app. That link is in the top of the description. To earn $20 off your first purchase buying concert tickets, sporting event tickets, March Madness tickets, NBA game tickets, whatever you're going to be doing with your friends and family this summer and this spring as we head into the best time of the year, March, with March Madness. $20 off your first purchase, whether your team's playing or not. If you have a game in your city or a tournament bracket field in your city, go check it out, right? $20 off your first purchase. SeatGeek's a great intuitive app. You'll be able to see a deal score, red, yellow, green, 1 through 10, as well as a view from your seat in a lot of arenas in the United States. So definitely check that out, SeatGeek.com, link in the top of the description. All right. A little bit of housekeeping out of the way. I'm doing a solo show because I'll be heading out to Washington, D.C. like I talked about on last week's podcast. Also, if you're following along on Twitter or X, I greatly appreciate it. That's where you'll get the fastest live updates of what I'm doing and what I'm working on throughout the day-to-day and throughout the week. So just keeping that in mind. Today, we're going to talk about my Jerome Wave 1 picks, right? So what is the Jerome? Really quick, kind of getting into it. It's a format of picking and I'll actually give the credit to the creator properly here, but it is a picking the conference tournaments in March Madness or pre-March Madness. So basically there's a point system to it. I'll pull it up here. The Jerome was something that was long-standing for for quite some time. It did retire this year, but shout out to Andrew Weatherman. I'll put his Twitter on the screen as well, or I'll put it in the description. Give him a follow. It's already too late to participate in Wave 1 officially. You have to participate in Wave 1 to participate in Wave 2 to be able to be a part of the leaderboard. There's a leaderboard, which is really cool. If I place really well, I'll keep you all updated and in tune, posted on Twitter, like I said. But here's the Jerome, at least from the website and how it's carried on. The Jerome lives on. The Jerome is a decade old, which is true, men's college basketball conference tournament pick'em contest. Here's the deal. You need to pick the winners of each conference tournament. No need to dive into the depths of analytics. If your team wins, you score points. Really quick point system here. It's through a Google form. Super easy. He keeps up with it all. He's an analytics guy. Went to Duke. Plus 0 points if your team does not reach the championship. Plus 2 if they lose in the championship game of their conference tournament. Plus 5 if they win the championship, and then plus 7 if they win the championship and are not a top 2 seed. So a couple of my picks you'll see are 3 seeds, 4 seeds, because I do believe that they can win, as well as the point value for the Jerome, worth the shot. And then plays max 2 games on a home court. That is including teams, like in the A-Sun, where they play the home venue. So a team like Stetson or Eastern Kentucky might be not worth the full 7 there. So now that we got the housekeeping out of the way for the Jerome, what are my picks, right? I want to sit here and talk to you guys about those picks today. As you'll see, we'll also, in the title, we'll get to NBA championship contender tiers. That is one of the most fun things I put together every year. It was actually an article. I'll run through that whenever we get to it. It was actually an article last year that I posted on House of College Hoops or houseenterprise.com for the NBA content. But we'll talk about that. So, my Jerome. Wave 1 included the America East, Atlantic Sun, Big Sky, Big South, the CAA, Horizon, Missouri Valley, Northeast, the Ohio Valley, the Patriot, the SoCon, the Southland, the Summit, the Sun Belt, and the West Coast Conference. I will get into my picks next week, depending on how the show lines up with a potential guest, but we will get into next week's with the remaining conferences, including most of the major power ones, ACC, Big 12, etc. So, the America East, we'll start with, we'll just go alphabetical like I have them on my paper here. The America East, and like I said, I'll throw the graphic up on YouTube periodically, but following along as a podcast will be a lot easier. I went with Vermont. Vermont and John Becker, the pedigree that is there, the amount of times they've made the NCAA tournament. I don't have a lot of these brackets in front of me because I don't think it's relevant to at least why I believe these teams are what they are, but I'll keep the conference standings moving if I need to. But the America East is going to be Vermont for me. They are the 1 seed, 25-6. I knew that wasn't right. 15-1 in conference. UMass Lowell is the other team that was a very popular pick. And then for value's sake, Bryant was definitely your best choice there. Atlantic Sun, we're going to skip almost right over this entirely. I went with Lipscomb, which, by the way, so did like over 50% of the people that voted on this. Over 1,600 people voted in Wave 1. Shout out to Andrew again for putting this together and keeping this going. But Lipscomb upset, unfortunately. They were the 3 seed. They were a really good value pick. They were, I think, 5th in points per possession in the entire country this season. So credible offense. We talked to their head coach on Everything College Basketball, Mr. Acuff, Lenny Acuff. He was on the Everything College Basketball podcast with us recently. Super great interview. Was rooting for him, number 3 seed. They did lose to a former player after he played, I believe, 3 years at Lipscomb. Hit a ridiculous, I believe KJ Johnson's his name, hit a ridiculous, they called it a 2, it was a 3. Runner in the lane, whatever you want to call it. It was nuts. Couldn't even see the basket whenever he shot it. Sorry for Lipscomb there. Sorry for Coach Acuff. But the ASUN is an incredible tournament that always feels like it has an incredible moment. All right, the Big Sky. Big Sky, I went with Weber State. Big Sky, just to be clear on some of the rankings here. The Big Sky, Eastern Washington is kind of your favorite that led the way. 15-3 in conference, 21-10 overall. Montana was 21-10 overall, 12-6 in conference. Northern Colorado is a very popular pick, 12-6, 19-12 overall. I went Weber State. They have the best player. It's as simple as that for me. Weber State has Dylan Jones. I'm going to just be out there and say Dylan Jones is the best player in the conference, and he is capable and talented enough to push them and continue to get them further down into this conference and potentially win it. The Big South, I actually can find in a couple of folks that cover the Big South pretty regularly, if not entirely. Brian Wilmer, shout out to Brian, who's covered many of these teams and many of these games. UNC Asheville, I understand the pedigree is there. Because of the standings, they aren't exactly a big point extra value team. They're a 2 seed. They're 20-11 at 12-4. I went with the favorite, High Point, what Alan Huss has done in the first year. They have 4 incredible guards, averaging double figures, or 4 players total, most of them being guards. 12.9 points or higher. Thiem, Hamilton, Giffa, and Miles, all averaging 12.9 or more. 24-7, 13-3 in conference. They dominated this season, which is an incredible testament. They are also the home team. This is one of those tournaments. I've been to it before when Campbell was the host here. I believe 2018, 2019 season. And look, at the end of the day, that's an advantage. And a brand new arena that's gorgeous. I cannot wait to get to it next season. Hopefully they're this good again. I assume so with Coach Huss and what he's built there. But the point is High Point's incredible. They have what you need to win in March. And I just didn't want to overthink that, despite Drew Pember being the 2-time Player of the Year in the Big South. The CAA, I'm going to give an abbreviated version of this answer because there will be a preview. Here's my plug on YouTube. I'm pointing at it. House Enterprise, or House of College Hoops, will be up on that site very soon. As I'm recording this podcast, it's late Wednesday night. I know normally I release Wednesday mornings, and not going to get into what's going on there and why that happened. But long story short, here we are, and it's coming out to you. This pod will go out early Thursday morning in your feeds. Before this tournament starts, I'll be in D.C., like I mentioned. Keep update of what's going on there. Some really cool content coming. But I have a preview going up with Zach Penrice, another awesome content creator, writer, person at House of College Hoops. He covers the DMV sports area. He is going to be in attendance after I leave for the semifinals and the finals. So we will have you covered with almost every single minute of the CAA coverage. We'll be talking about it on Friday on Twitter, but nothing in formality there. I went UNCW. UNCW, I know, is the 4 seed. So again, this is an incredible value. If you basically didn't pick Charleston or Drexel, you were getting a team that had a strong chance of winning the championship if they were a 3, 4, even 5 or 6. If you got into, I know Delaware's the 6. I want to make sure I'm not talking out of my tail here. With Hofstra being the 4 I know the tiebreakers is weird in how they fell. UNCW, I believe, eventually got the 4. I'll double check that really quick. But basically, if you believe in UNCW like I do, you believe that they have 4 attributes that can win a tournament game or win tournament games, plural. Best player on the floor in Shazarian White, a balanced offense, an incredible rotation of experienced guards, and a great coach. At the end of the day, I'm not going to sit here and give you the reason they can't win it because that's not what I'm doing. I'm giving you the reason they can. And ultimately, that's who I went with. They have an incredible coach, like I said, and Coach Settle. At the end of the day, UNCW, I think, is severely understated. Yes, after the tiebreakers, they did get the 4 seeds. So, incredible Jerome value, and I think they're the best team in this tournament. I've said it all year. And I also think they're the best team, or one of the only teams in this bracket of the CAA where one of these teams make the March Madness tournament. They're probably the one that can win the most games or win a game at least. I think they have the best chance. They've done it this year already, swept Charleston. They've overcome the adversity. They beat Kentucky at Rupp Arena. That doesn't happen often for a lot of these small major teams, mid-major teams. So shout out to UNCW. They are my pick in the CAA. In the horizon, Youngstown State. Sorry, YouTube, I covered up with the paper there. I went with Youngstown State. Really easy, obvious answer for me. Really balanced team and the best defense in the conference. I think they're due to win that tournament. The Missouri Valley was a tough one. I know you have Drake there. You even have Bradley as another choice. I went with Indiana State. This type of spread, 5-out type of offense they're getting. I'm not going to dive into all the numbers here, but if you've watched them enough this year, I mean, I've ranked them in the top 25 multiple times this season. You can check out the top 25 on Twitter. But what Coach Schertz has done with Robbie Avila, top 100 in KenPom offense and defense, Indiana State's an incredible team. They are going to be a team's worst nightmare if they play them in March Madness. Northeast, I'll be real with you. I hadn't watched really any at all. Talked to Coleman Crawley about this one a little bit. Trust his opinion, who's covered the Northeast up there quite a bit. Just the Northeast of the United States of basketball, not just the Northeast Conference. I just went with the best team and arguably the worst conference. Although Merrimack, I will say, is probably going to prove me wrong. They're going to want it more after losing last year. FDU getting their spot. We know what happened. FDU obviously upsetting Purdue. And then, obviously, they are now eligible to make the NCAA tournament, which is an incredible thing for them after the ridiculously dumb transition rules. So, Central Connecticut, ultimately, I didn't feel strongly either way between those two with Merrimack, and I went with the best team in the worst conference, basically. Ohio Valley, this one's some good value here. Morehead State, they played tough comp earlier in the year. I know that's something that kind of gets overblown. I actually take it a little bit more strongly than most do. I know mid-major, small major teams, for scheduling reasons and money, they're going to take and play anybody that they can. And I think that's valuable. I really do. The tough comp earlier in the year, they played Alabama, Purdue, Penn State, Chattanooga, Indiana. Some of those games were a lot closer than people realize. Sorry, Indiana. They're a 3-seed, extra points. I do think that they're a very good team, very balanced, strong defensively as well. The Patriot League, I'm not going to spend long on. Colgate. Colgate is a wagon. What Coach Matt Langle has done, he's an incredible coach, consistent winner. Shout out again to Coleman Crawley. That's the team he's been covering for the last 2 or 3 years with part of his Finding Cinderella before she gets to the ball. Colgate has that type of potential. Again, some of the teams they played in conference or non-conference, they almost beat Syracuse at the Dome. Yale, Arizona, Illinois, Iona, Cornell, all losses. Some wins that I think are worthy of noting. Gardner Webb, Weber State, we mentioned earlier, and Vermont, also mentioned earlier. So 2 of the teams I have picking to win this, they also played Colgate and lost. So interesting to note there, Colgate got those wins. The SoCon I've talked about many times on this podcast off and on. I'm just a fan of the conference as a whole. Covered them in the Everything College Basketball magazine preseason as well. I went with UNC Greensboro. Nobody should be surprised with this pick. When they beat Arkansas, it was like an I told you so moment for me. The Langley brothers are incredible. Starting to see some progression from Kobe being the better defender. Keyshawn starting to blossom into a great defender as well. Mikael Brown-Jones is like top 100 in like every offensive statistic on KenPom. He's had an awesome season. They can absolutely kill you from the three-point line, 7th in the country at 39.4%. I really like what those guys are doing out there in Greensboro. The Southland, McNeese State. It's McNeese's conference to lose. Like, I don't know how else to word that, but some stats to back it up. Win in multiple ways from what I've watched. 8th nationally in three-pointers, just behind UNC Greensboro at 39.2%. Top 76 in KenPom offense, 76th. And then Defense is 62nd. They have 3 losses all year. So definitely a great team there led by Will Wade. The Summit, I went with St. Thomas. This was probably my quote-unquote deepest sleeper now that I'm looking at it. Weber State, I guess you could call it. They were the 4 seed, UNCW 4 seed. I didn't reach down far into the barrel on some of these. I did a little bit more in Wave 2. We'll get to that next week. St. Thomas, sleeper team. They're a 4 seed. They've won some really strong games in the Summit Conference conference regular season. Again, better points, I mentioned that. Super efficient from the field. They're top 25 in the country in field goal percentage, 55.4%, and top 30 in effective field goal percentage. They're not going to miss. They're going to make the easy shots. They're going to make the hard shots that are in close, and they're going to force you to beat them and be an efficient scoring team with them, which is really hard to do, especially with some of these bottom teams in the Summit League. The Sun Belt, a.k.a. the Fun Belt. Everyone's heard it before. I'll plug this as well. I'll be on the Sun Belt Syndicate show. I believe it'll go out. I think it'll be live Tuesday the 13th or the 12th, whatever that Tuesday is, to 12th, because I come back from D.C. on the 11th. I'll be on that show talking the Sun Belt champion, as well as the hypotheticals, teams that Sun Belt tournament teams don't want to see in March Madness. A little bit of a preview, right? Or teams they do want to see as well. Hopefully we're talking about this team, App State. I know they're the favorite, so less points for the Jerome here. They're a balanced team offensively. They can beat you in any way they want. Coach Kearns is an incredible coach. What he's done there in that program deserves Coach of the Year. First outright regular season championship for them since the 70s. Demolished UNCW early in the year. And I say demolished, they won by 30. They beat Auburn at home, as y'all listening to this podcast, hopefully back in December when that happened. I was at that game with my wife. They beat JMU twice. They excel on the defensive end. I know the JMU beating them 3 times thing. I think App State's that good. Also, I think the public is so high on JMU right now that I almost feel like I'm getting better value from the number 1 team in this conference. Lastly, was most certainly not least, even though a little bit of a down year, there's some pretty picks that, I think San Fran was going to get you the best point value there from a realistic winner, just based on how this tournament is put together. It's a gross format, like gross from like if you don't want the low seeds, or I guess high seeds, however you word that. If you don't want the teams that aren't Gonzaga, St. Mary's to win, that's not the tournament for you, right? Pepperdine would have to win 9 games in a row and beat St. Mary's or Gonzaga or both. So I went with St. Mary's. It's definitely up for debate. I have been lower on Gonzaga all year and was arguing for they don't have an at-large chance, and they obviously put it together. I still don't think their resume is as great as people might be saying it is, but you have to trust the bracketologist there. At least a good one. Shout out to T3. Jonathan Warner. Look, they've been better for longer stretches than Gonzaga has. 16-game win streak, 15-0 to start the WCC, right? That won that first game right before the conference play started. I trust the defense, and I trust Aiden Mahamy. Just some stats to back it up here. Top 50 in offense, they're 50th. Top 15 in defense, they're 15th. They have wins over New Mexico, Colorado State, and UNLV. Interesting enough that all 3 of those are Mountain West teams, and 2 of those, New Mexico and Colorado State, are almost entirely surely in the tournament. New Mexico has still got a little bit more left to do. And then UNLV is the hottest team in the country. I tweeted about it the other day when they won, I think last night. Coach Kruger and what he's done in that program, following in his father's footsteps, who is obviously an incredible coach in the mid-2000s for the UNLV teams. Look, they aren't going to get the at-large bid. They just didn't. They have 2 quad 4 losses earlier in the year. But UNLV is the hottest team in the country right now. They've won 11 of their last 12, I believe is correct, or 10 of their last 11. Dadaine Thomas, I talked about in some preseason shows, as well as in the magazine. Incredible freshman who is playing like an upperclassman. Enough on UNLV, but those are some wins for St. Mary's there. They do have losses, notably, to Weber State, San Diego State, Utah, and Boise State. All teams except for Weber State, who are in the top 50 in KenPom. So, all in all, those are my Jerome picks. Didn't think it would take 20 minutes. And, there's some really cool stuff there. Again, shout out to Andrew for putting this all together, keeping this running, this long, withstanding tradition that I just learned about. All right, coming back after we talked about the Jerome at the top. Now we're going to jump into the NBA. Wanted to kind of do a split show here a little bit. This one may take a little bit longer, potentially, covering 30 teams here. But for the NBA fans, you'll enjoy this one. So we're going to be talking NBA championship contender tiers. For those that read the article last year, thank you. It was an incredible piece. Got some incredible feedback on it. Thank you for that. I'll recap a little bit of what last year's looked like, and then no real changes to the structure of the tiers. This is meant to be kind of breaking up the way we look at tiers. I know Tyler Rucker has done some great pieces on how tiers might be controversial for some folks, like the way they look at them. Some people don't like them at all. How do you use them as a barometer or whatever? I think they can be fun, especially if you make them fun. So here we are. I did try to make them fun. Last year's tiers looked like this. They're a little bit different. We'll start at the top. Legit contenders, also known as, for my standing and the way I value this and the way I look at this, doesn't mean that if they don't have this, they aren't a legit contender. Let me be clear. But legit contender, or also known as, has the best player in a series. Last year, we had a couple of different teams fit this criteria. I had Boston, Denver, Milwaukee, Philly, and Memphis. So thinking a little bit through there, I still thought, regardless of I think they were a legit contender. Memphis, Philadelphia, having Embiid, Giannis. Phoenix, it was Kevin Durant. I don't know. It was an interesting thing to look at. I'm not trying to dive into last year. Jokic, obviously, and then Boston with Jason Tatum. So I think I was right with those. Next contender is There's Something Holding Me Back, paying homage to really underrated artist, Shawn Mendes. Not something you expected to hear from me today, but somebody I really enjoy. There's Something Holding Me Back last year was Golden State, Cleveland, the Clippers. As you might be surprised, this is a large tier. Cleveland, the Clippers, Dallas, Sacramento, and New Orleans, and Miami. Oh boy, did that one age poorly. Next one is, as most NBA fans know, I'll put it on the screen, Anything is Possible with Kevin Garnett. I would love to yell that louder, but my wife is asleep. The Anything is Possible tier was literally just the Los Angeles Lakers. Oh, the irony of it being a Celtic screaming that. But yeah, so that was a very easy contender tier last year, I think. But, obviously the conference finals run they made was impressive. Next one is Needs a Heaven Sent Miracle. So basically, I would be shocked if this team won a championship last year. Again, this is last year for those listening and kind of jumping around or, doing this in your car, background, whatever. Minnesota, Atlanta, New York, Brooklyn. That's it. Those are the four for last year's tiers. For Needs a Heaven Sent Miracle, You're Doing Amazing, Sweetie. Flashing to the Jenner gif. Talking, I have no idea. I don't watch the Jenners, but it was funny. You're Doing Amazing, Sweetie, a.k.a. not this year, but things are looking up. I like the direction that you're going in, but I don't think you're a contender right this moment. Last year, Indiana, Oklahoma City. Well, that one aged really beautifully. Utah, Orlando. Those are the four there. This next tier is called Was Better Off Bottoming Out for Wemby because of the year of draft or Scoot that we had at the time. But was better bottoming out is kind of the theme of the idea. Obviously, Wemby, this year, the draft doesn't have a player like Wemby, so that one might be a little more interesting when we get to it. Washington Wizards, Chicago Bulls, Toronto Raptors, Portland Trail Blazers. Those are your teams in the better off bottoming out. Last two tiers, the bad tier. Cue the crying Jordan meme. Detroit Pistons, San Antonio Spurs, Charlotte Hornets. Probably was pretty right there. And then the Houston Rockets. They were their own tier, as dumb as that sounds. So now that we've recapped that and put that to bed, this year's tiers. We're going to start at the top because no one came here to hear about the bottom teams, unfortunately. Unless you're a fan of those, I apologize. This year's tiers, we have the Boston Celtics and the legit contenders. We have Denver, Milwaukee, Oklahoma City. We'll run through those. Just wanted to give you that tier there for a visual. Boston, I think, is the favorite to win the championship right now, in my opinion. I know that Nikola Jokic is not on the Boston Celtics, so I should probably say Denver, as much as I said the things I said last year about Denver, and they ultimately obviously won the championship. Boston's the best team. They're the best team. They're the deepest team. They have Jason Tatum. They have number one player, like I said, on a championship contending team. An improved staff, adding to Joe Mazzulla's staff with Charles Lee and Sam Cassell. Mazzulla looks more confident. That's definitely something that's talked about among Celtics people. I'm going to take Noah Dalzell at our word there. Tight-knit group that has made sacrifices. Drew Holiday went from being a perennial piece on a championship contending Bucks team a few years ago, championship winning Bucks team, I might add, to now being a guy that's okay with taking 5 shots. I think that change has really helped this team. And then Kristaps Porzingis' impact on both ends has been incredible. I'm right now, assuming fully healthy at the moment, if the season were to end today, however you want to look at this, projecting forward some here because of what I believe. Boston Celtics are my number 1 legit contender. And for the frame of reference for listening to this, I did try to put these in order inside of the tiers. So the teams 1, 2, 3, 4 in this case for that. Second team I have is Denver Nuggets. I hate to say I'm not going to spend much time on this, but they're the reigning champs for a reason. Jokic is the best player in the world. That's not a debate. Argue with a wall. The supporting cast feels strong right now. The passing just feels extra tedious. Not tedious. That's not the right word. It feels extra impactful. I don't know, guys. That's probably not the right word either. But the point is, it feels like the ball is moving to the spots that it's supposed to be. Jokic is an incredible player, even minus some of these the Suns games the other night. As I'm recording this, the Suns held him to more turnovers than assists, which I'd be shocked if that hadn't happened in 5 years. They have 8 guys they can rely on, or will eventually get there as Peyton Watson continues to show flashes like he has an incredible dunk against Phoenix the other night. Milwaukee, having Giannis is greater than not having Giannis is literally what I wrote down. I wrote having Giannis greater than not having Giannis. I will say on the devil's advocate side of things, Dame doesn't feel as big of an impactful player compared to what they might have expected from getting him at in the offseason and being the second option behind Giannis. Also, Doc Rivers coaching in the playoffs. That's not something I'm sure Bucks fans are enthused about. Obviously, he took over a team that was having defensive woes, but they were, 30-13. It was questionable to fire Griffin, but it seemed like that was more of this is probably what Giannis feels is best, and you got to listen to your best player that you're paying $1 trillion to. And then the depth scares me. That is my biggest question mark with this team is I don't know how deep this bench really is. Bobby Portis had a big night the other night, but there was no Giannis, I believe. In that one, I think he had like 28 and 13 or something stupid like that. That's not what you're going to expect to get from Bobby Portis deep into the playoffs and a championship run, as much as I love Bobby Portis. The last legit contender, and this one's probably, if you listen to me, not going to surprise you, but if you're just tuning into this for the first time or periodically, I have the Oklahoma City Thunder. The young, inexperienced thing is completely legit. But we have seen teams with I'm not going to call Shea generational necessarily, but with that caliber of player, a la the 2014, Golden State Warriors, go from being a, whatever team that they were, the Thunder fought last year for the play-in, played the Lakers, whoever the heck they played. They beat the Lakers on LeBron's championship night. That's the thing that keeps sticking in my head. But you know what I mean? They were a 10 seed last year. They, had very obvious weaknesses, but they had Shea, and they were at least able to make a stride for the play-in. That was a huge accomplishment for them. And now, as we record this, they're the number 1 seed in the freaking Western Conference. That jump is worthy of this legit contender tier alone, and because it's withstood into the second week of March. That's just not going to drop off. Like, if it hasn't now, it's not going to, right? And SGA is this good. Supporting cast is awesome. They obviously lack rebounding, like I mentioned, or I alluded to from last year's problems. I'm surprised that they just don't have a big man that can fill 8 to 14 minutes in a playoff game when Chet gets into foul trouble. I'm surprised they didn't get Gafford instead of Dallas. I still will continue to beat that into a pulp because I just didn't understand it at the time, and I don't understand it now why Gafford. I understand they have a model and a plan of every single player on the floor is somebody that can shoot, somebody that can cut, minus maybe Josh Giddey on the shooting part, but somebody who can shoot, somebody who can cut, somebody who can be reliable with the ball in their hands. Their lineup is shooting an incredible rate right now. A bunch of guys over 40% from 3. Again, I know the young, experienced team thing, but SGA is that good. He gets to the rim at a ridiculous rate in the playoffs when the whistles make it swallowed more. He knows how to finish regardless. Obviously, his free throw rate is very high, but I think that will work itself out in the playoffs. I think he's only going to continue to get better. All right, that completes the legit contenders tier. We're going to move on to There's Something Holding Me Back. At the top of There's Something Holding Me Back, I have the Los Angeles Clippers. I don't want to sit here and beat a drum over and over again. Kawhi and PG's health. I know they've been healthy this year, just like Anthony Davis and LeBron have been. But it's always going to be a concern. Harden as a primary ball handler in the playoffs, although I will say this role, he's more focused on being a playmaker and making shots as a third option, and he seems to be bought in, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that that's a problem I'm legitimately scared about. I have more on the Clippers, but I think I want to save that for another time. The Minnesota Timberwolves is my next team. I have, this might shock people because of obviously my recent conversation with Tyler Metcalf, just what I think about Anthony Edwards. But the first question I have with the Timberwolves is, can Edwards be the best player in a series, right? And before people freak out and tell me, he obviously could. Let's think about it for a second, right? Is he better than Shea? That's probably the most arguable one, right? But I would go with Shea right now still in a playoff series if they're playing each other in the West. Giannis, he's not better than Giannis right now and probably never will be. So Giannis will be the best player in the series at the moment. Jokic, not even a question. And then Tatum, I don't think that's a question either. Kawhi and PG, I would still lean Kawhi in that regard just because of the two-way ability and just how ridiculous Kawhi is in the playoffs. So not saying this won't mean the Timberwolves can't make a conference finals if Anthony Edwards is not the best player in a series. I think this team is good. But there's questions like, is there a solution for the offense when things get tight in the fourth quarter? Some of the clutch stuff, like they haven't had as many clutch situations as they might have liked. Well, they obviously would like to not be in clutch continuously in the regular season, but I would like to see more of those clutch moments where they have opportunity to generate offense. And if Ant's being double teamed, then they've got to make sure that they have enough ball handlers that can get the ball where it needs to be and score. Right? I know Cat, obviously, you're not somebody you want to rely on in that moment. I really did want to put them in a legit contenders tier, but those two questions were too big for me. The next team, I have the Knicks, Randall and OG's health. I hate to keep leading with health on these, but this is such a big if, especially for teams that are so heavily reliant on their top guys being healthy. Teams are starting to figure out how to slow down the Knicks offense slightly. I know that there's been some injuries, like I said. But when, not that teams are containing Brunson by any means. He's been an incredible player this year. But in the playoffs, smaller guard, teams are going to shrink the defense a little bit. I have concerns there, even with the fully healthy Randall and OG. But still a big question on Randall. OG seems pretty close to coming back. Look, Miami being in this tier, it would be disrespectful to put them anywhere else because at the end of the day, I mean, this tier is humongous. I think we have 7 teams in this tier. Miami has to be in there. I just put them in the middle just because of last year's success, honestly, and this team is technically better. Jimmy Butler being playoff Jimmy is obviously something that is going to put fears in the hearts of me for picking them any higher or lower than this, and then for teams that are playing them, relying on a rookie and Jaime Jaquez in big spots concerns me a little bit, although he seems to be built for the challenge. He seems to be an NBA player that's ready to play. Not a super efficient offense. Defense still feels legit as always, especially in a playoff setting, and I'll take Eric Spoelstra up against any coach in the NBA right this moment. Phoenix Suns. Health. Just health in general, right? Bradley Beal hasn't played a consistent amount of games this year. That's somebody you're not winning a championship if Bradley Beal's not, being one of your best players like he should be and can be. They lack a point guard, but at the end of the day, sometimes they don't really need one. Booker, obviously, earlier in his career was put into positions where he was taking the ball up a ton, which I think helped him learn what that can feel and look like, even though that wasn't typical of NBA shooting guards even back then. I know he's been in the league for such a long time now to even think that was that long ago, mid-2010s. But, they have guys that can generate offense. It's just, some of those sets where you need a traditional point guard, or if you're trying to feed the ball to Nurkic, who, again, a point being Nurkic being a reliable big for 4 rounds really scares me. But they can get hot at any moment. They, like we saw the other night against Denver, as I'm recording this on Thursday, the 6th of March. They played Phoenix earlier this week. I think it was on Tuesday. And they just absolutely, KD was struggling the whole game, and then he hit 2 or 3, 4 big shots in a row, and that game was over in a heartbeat, despite, I think it went into overtime. Look, like I said, their big run is always it's always lurking, and whoever's going to do it, no one knows. The Philadelphia 76ers is Joel Embiid's health. I hate to tell you that that's the thing holding them back, but they were atrocious defensively since he's been gone. It's gotten better a little bit. If he's healthy, I think Maxi's ascension this year to this caliber of guard he is as a passer and as an attacker and a shooter, even his shooting has just absolutely mightily increased from what I thought it would be in the pre-draft process a couple of years ago. Like I made that very clear. I did not think his shot would even get to this point, much less this quickly. Buddy Hield's addition, I think, is positive. I think that helps them a lot in playoff series, even though, this team already isn't, I feel like, super deep, but the way Nick Nurse plays, I don't think that matters. Cleveland Cavaliers, can Donovan Mitchell carry this team because of the Evan Mobley questions on offense? Look, I think defensively this team's gotten really good. Max Strus has obviously come into his own a little bit just as an overall player coming over from Miami. Garland had a really big defensive stop on Jason Tatum the other night. I know they reversed that call, but ultimately the defense was what helped make that call reverse, right? That he obviously didn't foul Tatum there. It was reversed, whether you think it was or not. It was great defense up to that point. They're starting to figure out how to win even with Garland back because they went on that crazy win streak without Garland when he was hurt. Again, I think it ultimately, all those factors, it comes back to, can Donovan Mitchell carry this team? This tier, anything is possible. So we're getting into the kind of long shots here a little bit. This tier does not include an Eastern Conference team. Dallas Mavericks are the number one for this one for me. Having Luka Doncic makes any title chance at least possible, even if it is a long shot. I really could just stop at that and move on. I will say Kyrie has been good this year with no antics to speak of. That could change tomorrow. I do like Lively and Williams, but the spacing is concerning, I will say. Like, I don't buy that the spacing because of having Kyrie and Luka. Like, you need that third guy. You need that fourth guy that is ready, available to hit open shots, and I don't know if they have enough of that, especially if in a tight playoff series, you're going to need guys to make shots, especially from deep. The Los Angeles Lakers, healthy LeBron and AD this year, I get it. Otherwise, the roster, I don't think is cut out to win a championship. I'm just going to leave it at that. Anything's possible because healthy LeBron and Anthony Davis, we saw how that turned out in 2020. Also, that team was better. Needs a heaven sent miracle. I debated putting the New Orleans Pelicans in the anything's possible tier. If a healthy and Zion Ingram are out there, it's a dangerous combo. But some of the same questions I have for Phoenix with lacking a point guard, there isn't a point guard on this team that I like, or really at all that they have right this second. I love Dyson Daniels just as a prospect long term. That's not what I mean from a point guard thing. I don't want McCollum running my point. It is what it is. I want a traditional point guard. I know point Zion. They've tried that before, whatever. But these guys are shot makers. You need to get them the ball in space, in transition. You need a guy that's not Jose Alvarado, who I think is an incredible player and defender specifically. But the Pelicans, I think, are a lot further away from a championship than I would like them to be, even based on some of the defensive versatility and talent with guys like Trey Murphy and Herb Jones. Golden State Warriors, any other tier would feel disrespectful, to be honest with you. Disrespectful to the listening public and audience. Putting them higher, and then any lower would be disrespectful to having Steph Curry and Draymond Green still on a team, despite what we know Draymond can what he can do potentially in a playoff series, i.e. get himself in trouble. But any team with Steph Curry that is engaged and not doing stupid stuff, I mean, you have to at least consider them from a long shot standpoint, because no one really thought they were going to win the title 2 years ago, if we're being real with each other, now that that's aged. I think they have a little bit of a crossroads they've got to address in the offseason, of course, with some of their guys getting older, having some young guys that we really like out there. Love Kuminga. My spot on Kuminga Island has never been sold. I was a Kuminga guy in the draft. Pods, I'll be honest, I was wrong, had him in the 40s. But they've got those two guys. They've got pieces they can build around. They've got to figure out what to do with the direction of the older guys. You're doing amazing, sweetie, a.k.a. not this year, but things are looking up. This is an interesting tier. Got a few teams I'll run through pretty quickly. I get that the Orlando Magic, as I'm recording this, are 4th in the Eastern Conference, but I don't think they're a legit contender, which feels like a steep. I could put them in anything's possible. They're too young. I don't think Fultz can lead them for 4 rounds as a point guard. Joe Ingles is your, reliable vet in the playoffs. I'm not sure I'm a fan of that. You can exploit Wendell Carter. Jonathan Isaac isn't reliable, health-wise. I think he's an incredible defender and deserves some good nods there. But Paolo, Franz, Suggs, all vital pieces to the future. Obviously, they have Black and some other young guys as well. But those are your three core principal pieces. Paolo, Franz, Suggs, ton of cap space this offseason. So there's nothing wrong with them being in that you're doing amazing, sweetie. And I would tell them the same thing if they want a playoff series, which I think that they can do potentially. Doesn't mean they think they're contenders. Again, this gears back to being a contender. The Indiana Pacers, I think because of the way we view Tyrese Halliburton now and having Pascal Siakam on this team, Miles Turner, right? Some very valuable pieces here. This might feel like a slight. This is, I believe, where I had them last year because of just what I believed in some of the young talent, which is still true to this team now. But I'm not putting them in legit contenders. I'm not putting them in there's something holding me back. And I'm sure not going to put them anywhere else below that, above that, because it would be no different. So I think this is where I have to leave them. Tyrese Halliburton, of course, he's going to be no lower, or he, because of this team, because of him, I don't know how else to word that, he is not going to be any lower of a tier. First year with Siakam, so next year could be, obviously an improvement. We always see, these trades where the second year with the guy or the first full year with the guy, we see a lot better of a cohesion. Like I said, promising young guys, but not a real contender, even though they're talented. The Utah Jazz, I'll be quick. Lowry and young pieces are awesome, but Danny's not done building. And what they have now with Will Hardy as a coach, is an incredible coach. This is where they belong. The Toronto Raptors, that one's going to feel weird to some folks. They're only there because they actually decided to rebuild by moving Siakam and OG. I know maybe some of the pieces some of the fans weren't a fan of. Whatever. Look, anytime a team doesn't sit there, and we'll get into this in a minute, doesn't sit there and be in limbo, I'm proud of you. I think you're doing amazing, sweetie, even though Masai Ujiri's definitely got some questions to answer to the fan base in the next year or so. The Houston Rockets is the last team. This should absolutely just shock people because, I had them as their own tier below bad last year. What Ime has done coming in and changing the shock of that culture of those guys shot chucking and there's no accountability there. Done an incredible job getting guys to buy into their roles, right? Jalen Green is somebody that is okay, or it seems to be okay buying into the role of him not being a 25 shot a game guy. They're playing through Şengün as they should. They're still a horrid defensive team, but that's only going to get better with time. Was better off bottoming out. I really thought this tier was going to be bigger. And ultimately, as I was making the list, I went through West first and then I did East, I think. Either way, I did an entire one conference, so I didn't get them out of order or forget anybody. And then I went through the other conference and I was like, oh my God, I have 0 teams from the West and I have 2 teams from the East. The 2 teams are the Atlanta Hawks. They should have figured out a deal for Murray. The value wasn't going to go up or get any better. They had already tanked it enough by having him so many rumors. I know that we have examples like Miles Turner where that can be mended. But I think some of the Miles Turner rumors, as that ages and as we look back on it, I think some of those rumors were probably more from other teams trying to get Miles Turner. I don't know. What's the future of this team? I talked to Chris O'Brien on one of the podcasts we did. We did a home and home on Obi's office and over here on 2-Pointers. And we talked about the future of the team a little bit. Trae Young, there's a potential package deal there to somewhere like Orlando, having the cap space, having the the draft capital, the young guys. I have no idea what they're going to do, and honestly, I'm not going to try to figure it out right now. Chicago Bulls. I would be doing this team a disservice. Actually, I would be doing this team too much credit, or giving this team too much credit, if I gave them a longer rant than Chris O'Brien did on Ball Game Podcast. I'm just going to keep it simple. Why try to keep all the older guys together there and not really pick a direction? Kind of going back to what I thought about the Raptors. Vucevic, DeRozan. Vuce, I believe, still has some extra years on his deal, but DeRozan being an expiring at least helps you move him there, even if it is a slightly large contract to a contender. I don't know why he wouldn't fit in Philly, right? Especially to fill those games without Joel Embiid. The spacing and the 3-point shooting in the playoffs, maybe, sure, I get it. Levine, the market was absolutely not there. I fear that slightly as I get further away from that trade deadline, I don't know actually what value was probably out there for some of their guys. I don't know. Even if you're selling low, you're selling and you're at least giving the fan base, albeit one that is used to having Michael Jordan or was used to winning championships, and we're far enough removed from that now that I mean, Bull fans just want to see winning games in the United Center. They still show up and they still support that horrid front office. And more power to them. Last tier that's not real, I guess, tier, bad. I don't really have a fancy creative name, and I'm not going to try to force it because these teams are terrible. We have a few here. Brooklyn Nets. The reason I put them in bad and not was better off bottoming out is because they don't have their first round pick in 2024. I believe that was part of the Houston Harden deal. 99% sure. I didn't look up the history of it there. I can't put them in better off bottoming out if they don't have their pick to bottom out for. It's just that simple. I do think that they're talented, right? But if Bridges is your championship level piece, I don't think that that's going to win you a championship anytime soon, much less this year, which is what this is geared towards. Charlotte Hornets, I do love that they picked a direction. They moved on from Kupchak being the day-to-day GM. I know he's got some kind of office role there. Brandon Miller's been awesome, even if I didn't think so or didn't think he would be as quickly. Doesn't change that they're bad. Obviously, LaMelo was hurt for a good stretch of the season there. The Memphis Grizzlies, this feels incredibly low for a team that was a 2 seed last year that maybe been, maybe should have been probably not as high as a 2 seed potentially, but they won the games to be there. Ja missed 25 games, of course, with the suspension. He got injured not long after he came back. Lack of cohesion or consistency. This team's just hard to watch. Even when they got Ja back, it just didn't feel like a really tight, cohesive unit. That helps with your star point guard and best player. Doesn't play because of ridiculous off-court antics. I'm, no scientist here or no body language doctor, but probably doesn't help. Last two teams in this tier, Portland Trailblazers in full rebuild, so can't harp you for that. They at least said, screw it, we're done. Fun young talent, Scoot struggles, and that's okay because we need to give the guy time and stop overreacting to guys struggling in their first year, especially as a rookie. Smaller guard, a little bit there. Look, I'm not going to get into the Scoot debate with myself or with the audience that wants to comment. I can already read your comments now. San Antonio Spurs. People are going to lose their mind that this team is this low, and I don't care. The team is terrible. Victor Wembanyama is the only reason that you tune into the freaking 12 ESPN games that they've gotten this year, which they probably should. I'm not saying they shouldn't. They have no true point guard. Imagine what he could be or the impact he could have if there was a true playmaker getting him the ball more consistently in his spots, which is really anywhere once he crosses half court. So that concludes the bad tier. And you're probably sitting here thinking, if you're doing the math, that's 28 teams. So who is in the last year's Houston Rockets tier? This year it's the Detroit Pistons and Washington Wizards tier. There are people that watch this show that I know that I am appreciative of in this industry that are going to hear this, and I'm sorry that they have to hear this. That they cover these teams, they understand, and they know the Detroit Pistons and the Washington Wizards deserve to be in their own category, right where they belong in this tier. Look, I am not saying that these teams are ridiculously bad by any stretch of the imagination from a talent standpoint. Right? Cade Cunningham has come into his own, right? The shooting splits for him are incredible compared to what they predictively might have been through this point in his career. I love Jalen Duren coming into the draft, and I think he's been an incredibly physical and dominating player. I think Asar has started to show those defensive flashes that we knew were there. Look, I can go down the line with that talent of that team. Both these teams have 9 wins with, we're 60 plus games into the season, 53 losses there, 52 for Detroit. Washington, look, I love Bilal Coulibaly, the potential. It's going to take longer than the next 2 or 3 years. They have a clear vision and a clear plan, but I can't, they're ran by Jordan Poole on a night-to-night basis offensively, and I would love to sit here and tell you something that I really love from both these teams. The Wizards have lost 16 in a row. The Pistons have lost 3 in a row after they broke that ridiculous streak that they were on. I don't want to force it, but I at least like the talent for the Pistons. Money is obviously, it's not working out there, and the payment that he has is ridiculous. I don't want to get into that because I really liked Money when he was in Phoenix, but some of the Chris Paul numbers when Chris Paul played and versus when he didn't or when he was hurt doesn't help Monty Williams' coaching case. And then Washington at least has a plan. They at least finally, after so many years of this weird purgatory and no man's land, are we going to be the 5 seed at the best if we have everything go right? Or are we going to be playing at that time? It would have been for no play-in, so it would have been 7-8 seed, or now as a play-in team. That was the perfect middle ground for the Wizards. They were a play-in team regardless. That was their label in my head no matter what. So Again, no disrespect to either of those teams. I like the vision of the Wizards, and I like the talent of the Pistons. They've got some things they got to work on. All right, that is your NBA contender tiers list for 2024. I'm looking forward to seeing how the NBA season winds down here, as sad as that sounds. Focus, obviously, on this channel and on anything I do from a content standpoint, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on House College Hoops or House Enterprise, is going to be college basketball driven. Everything college basketball show, the preview bracket, whatever you want to call it, the big extravaganza, that'll be out on March 17th. That'll be live at 5 o'clock, the day after Selection Sunday. This podcast will have my bracket prediction show. More than likely will be solo this year, just me picking my picks. As much fun as it was with having Josh, and I think we had Phil on last year as well. Just I didn't want to talk to myself that quickly or that early on into that process. So, but I'll have a good grasp on what I want to pick this year, and I think that'll be a really fun show. May line up a guest for it, but just expect it to be a solo show this year. That'll be really fun. A couple of guest spots coming on. Again, the best place to follow, as you're seeing on YouTube right on the screen, at Trevor Everette on Twitter or on X, whatever the heck we're calling it these days. That's the best way to keep up with me. Follow along on there for the CAA coverage coming up. Again, read that preview with me and Zach Penrice. We previewed all 14 teams in the CAA, our sleeper, and ultimately who we thought wins that conference tournament. So I think that was a good wind down. At least I want to make sure I always mention that don't forget SeatGeek is the presenting sponsor. You get $20 off your first purchase, whether you're going to March Madness, NBA games, whatever it is. Like I said at the top, $20 off that first purchase. Code 2pointers. Link in the top of the description will get you that. TWOPOINTERS. Greatly appreciate the support. And of course, using that link is going to help get you, that's the wrong code, that is going to help get you that $20 off your first purchase and help support the show to continue to bring out all the content as best I can. Sorry it was delayed. I know a day late there as it hits your feed. But when you wake up Thursday morning on the 7th, you are going to realize that this podcast is out, and I greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you're on Spotify, Apple, Google, or any other podcast platform where you are listening, greatly appreciate you. 5-star review and a rating and a share would greatly be appreciated. Enjoy the fact that this podcast was a solo podcast of 53 minutes, so thank you very much for the support there. This has been the 2 Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everette, and enjoy the fact that it's March.